Yes, a great
Oh,
radio voice you have.
no break.
For you? No.
You had to work through your break. Everybody else took a break. You had to work and do Q&A, and now it's 3:00 and it's back to you.
Okay, I got this. I can handle it. Put a little more on me. Where is Marcus? I don't even see him.
I'm right here, brother.
Oh, I hear you, but I still don't see you. Okay, Marcus Sheridan, I'm glad you're with us today. So, and Marcus and I met. Marcus's company, Impact, is one of our member companies, so they're very familiar with the work that we're doing. And Marcus did a webinar with us a week or two ago that was really impactful, and a ton of people had great comments about it. And he's an expert in marketing and sales in a very unique way. The webinar was around how you do that kind of now, especially with COVID, and you're not running into somebody's office and knocking on a door, meeting face to face. But from a technology standpoint, how you can improve that. And he and I were kind of chatting earlier via email, and I said, why don't you just, if you don't mind, just bring what do you think the top 5 things people need to be doing right now to increase the impact of their marketing and their sales? So talk us through what that might be.
Yeah, so I want to share 2 trends or stats to lay the foundation for this, Andy. And I think this is really, really important for everybody that's listening to this. And keep in mind, as we have the conversation today, and I know that this goes without saying with, all the Petra community of organizations, but we're all in the same boat here. We're all in the same business, right? The people business. And let's make sure we're thinking in those terms. So one major trend that I've been talking about for about 8 years, I certainly didn't, I wasn't the one that discovered it, although we all have seen it and felt it, is this idea that 70% of the buying decision is made before someone talks to a salesperson today, on average. That's B2B, B2C, it's higher. They redid this study, and they now are saying it's 80%. So 80% of the buying decision is made before you shake their hand, before you know they exist, before they fill out that form on your website, before they call your organization. Now, if this number is true, it just means that we've got to see the world a little bit differently. And I see a lot of business leaders don't understand this trend. And the other side to it is a lot of their sales teams don't understand this trend. Because if we went back to when the internet was getting started, which, by the way, does anybody here, and you can type this in chat, let's see if anybody's really good, an interactive moment, okay? Does anybody know the year that email became mainstream for businesses? Don't Google it. Just, does anybody have a guess? Type in chat if you know. All right, Nikki did a pretty good job. It was really, really close. So it would be somewhere between 1996 and 97. Okay, that's when it was, between 96 and 97. Now, here's what's funny about it. A whole bunch of salespeople that year pushed back on email. So we're just not doing it. And of course, so what's funny is some of us on this call might have been some of the ones that were pushing back in 1996 and 97 on email. And of course, we know what happened. They either got on board or they got left behind. To this day, we still have a lot of salespeople that believe they handle about 70 to 80% of the sale. Whereas every study is telling us that it's actually opposite. They're handling somewhere around 20, 25% of the sale. And what would be traditionally considered as marketing, which I wouldn't call it marketing anymore per se, is handling the other more than 2/3 of the sales process. So what does this mean? One thing that we're seeing more and more companies do that are really progressive when it comes to their digital sales and marketing is they have what's called a revenue team. And underneath that revenue team, you have sales and marketing. It's no longer us versus them. It's we are both responsible. Sales is responsible for the marketing initiatives, at least part of it, right? Who are the best subject matter experts in a company? Usually, oftentimes it's sales team, not marketing. Yet we ask marketing to be subject matter experts, produce all that content, put it up on the website. It's naive. It's unrealistic. So sales should be seeing themselves part of their job description, frankly. And we see many organizations do this. It's marketing. At the same time, marketing has got to say, we are responsible for revenue. And if your marketing team isn't thinking that they're responsible for revenue, there's a good chance that the stuff they're producing could be so fluffy that it's never going to see the returns that they should be seeing in 2020 and beyond. Okay, so that's the first major stat. So really quick question I have for everybody. And once again, do this in chat because you all were awesome a second ago in chat. So let's do it again. You got to be super self-aware, but we're all self-aware. So this is good. Okay. If we came to your sales team right now within your organization and we said to them, what percentage of the sales process do you handle as a sales department in terms of this customer's journey? Okay. What percentage on average do you think your salespeople would say? On average, what do you think your salespeople would say? All right. Now, look at what we're seeing on the screen right now. All right. This is how salespeople think. Now, granted, some of us are exceptions, and some of you have spent a ton of time either teaching your sales team this or somehow they've realized it because of what's happening within your industry or marketplace. I'm telling you this, until our sales teams understand this phenomenal trend, they will usually see themselves in a silo and not look to become incredibly aligned with what marketing is doing and get on the exact same page and really form that revenue team. Okay, so that's one major stat that was so important. Thanks everybody for jumping in on that too. It's quite fascinating to see that. Now, a second major stat that we all need to look at. I think I might have mentioned this in the previous webinar, but it's such a big deal. Recent study shows that 33% of buyers would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. I'm going to repeat for effect. 33% of buyers would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. Now, if you're a millennial, that number goes up to 44%. Now, here is the problem. You go to your sales team and say, well, how do we create a seller-free sales experience? What does everybody do? Oh, you got a freak out fest right there. All of a sudden, trying to replace me, trying to get rid of salespeople. No, we're not trying to get rid of salespeople. And we should paint a different message. But when you create seller-free sales experiences, you actually produce way more leads for sales teams. This is what I found over and over again as we do this. You say, what do you mean by a seller-free sales experience? It's anytime they can make decisions that they would have had to have made with your sales team on your website because you enable them to do that thing, whatever that thing is, find out that answer, whatever that is. All right. And so let's do another moment of self-awareness. All right. If you were looking at your website right now, okay, you were looking at your products and your services, okay, and you said on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being we have a completely seller-free sales experience. At least, yes, we have salespeople, but we have made it very seller-free if it needs be. Or 1 being we haven't. Now, before you answer this, let me give you an example of how we've done this with my pool company. Okay, so for those that don't know, I've got a swimming pool company as well. It's the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. We manufacture fiberglass pools as well. It's called River Pools and Spas. Okay? The way we do this as a manufacturer is we allow end users to build and price their pool and get a price range on our website. We're the only manufacturer in the world that does this, okay, on our website. So that's as seller-free as we can almost do it without just saying, hey, you can order the pool and like literally here's everything, without cutting out our dealers. We don't want to cut out our dealers, but that enables us to be more seller-free, okay? And so anything that you do that replicates that sales process where they can learn it without talking to a salesperson is seller-free. Self-scheduling tools, seller-free. All these are seller-free, okay? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you're already onto this, you're just crushing it, you're way ahead of the marketplace. 1 being we are not creating a seller-free sales experience at all right now, okay? On a scale of 1 to 10, if you had to say where you are, okay? Go ahead and put it on the screen. We've got a couple of very self-aware people already. David, Nikki, Michael, thank you so much for that. Okay. Now, 1 second here. I saw a person that was a 9. Reggie, can you unmute yourself for a second? All right. Thanks for piping up here. So I can't see you because there's a million people on this call. But Reggie, what have you done that allowed you to say 9? And I certainly believe that's a 9, but I'm curious so everybody can hear, what are you doing to create a seller-free sales experience within your organization?
Well, it's my opinion, and I haven't done it. I'm not the one who developed it, but I think our online experience at Haggerty is really good. Customers can get on, they can do a quote. We've even given examples when we're doing shows where people could go on and how simple it was to put your information in, have a quote, and then actually have straight through processing, have an insurance policy. Really, you could do it if everything's good, you got a good driving record.
Yeah.
Probably
So
10
really, okay,
minutes.
good. Okay, good. So really quick, in order to buy from you right now, do I have to talk to somebody on your team?
No.
Okay, great. So you've created that, whereas many of your peers, I'm sure, have not yet created that. Is that correct?
Well, that's just part of the Haggerty experience. I should, to be clear. It's so anybody, I'm not in sales in particular. I support the members after they come along, but having worked as a sales agent, that's available. So a customer can come in and
Okay.
on the website and have a policy.
Okay, good. Now let's stop it there for a second. I just want everybody to think about this. I'm not suggesting here that that. I'm not suggesting that you kill a wonderful sales process that you have. So don't assume that, please. What we're saying here is, as business leaders, if we're not thinking about this trend, we're going to potentially be left behind. And this is not a minor, it's a major. Remember, 20 years ago, that 80% number, 80% of the buyers all the way through the buying process, right, today, that was about 20, 30% 20 years ago. So those people were those that figured out the 80% early, they're just crushing it. They're absolutely crushing it, okay? So we wanna make sure we do that. All right, good stuff, Reggie. Go ahead and mute yourself, man. Appreciate that very much. All right, I want to mention a couple other things for you as well. Now, one of the things that you may have heard me talk about before, and I'm not going to do a deep dive on this. For those that don't know, I have a book called They Ask You Answer, and many companies see that. Thank you, Andy. Nice visual aid. Many companies see that as really when it comes to their content strategy, and many marketing agencies around the world today use that book as their guide to creating a content strategy with their clients, with their customers. Okay. Now, one thing that we know to be true, is that as buyers, we are obsessed, like literally obsessed with 5 subjects in terms of how we research online. Okay. There's 5 subjects that whenever you're ready to make a major purchase, you love to research. 5 things. All right. Now, before I say what they are, and I'm going to ask those that have never even heard me before talk. I'm going to ask you in the chat, type in something that you always search, whether it's a product, a service, a company, doesn't matter. What is something that you always research about a particular product or service? Okay. All right. Go ahead. Keep going. Keep going. You're doing great. Reviews, ratings, reviews, reviews, reviews. Okay. All right. All right. Now, all right. Got some good ones there. So everybody said reviews. A bunch of you were saying pricing. Some of you said quality. Now, what's interesting about quality is you've probably never searched, though, before the word quality in Google. The way you arrive at quality is by searching other phrases, but you always are researching quality. The way you do that, one, is through reviews. Now, there's 5 major subjects out there, and I have a point to this, so stay with me. I promise this is going to be incredibly helpful to you if you just really lend your ear to this. So what are the 5 subjects that we as buyers are obsessed with, yet businesses don't want to talk about? Number 1 is price. Number 2 is problems or negatives. Number 3 is comparisons. Number 4 is reviews. Number 5 is best. So think about all the times you've researched price online. Think about all the times you've researched a negative, a problem with negative reviews of, okay, so that's a problem, okay? Think about all the times you've compared one thing with another online. Think about all the times you've done a review search online. Think about all the times you've used the word best plus something else online. This is B2B, B2C, it doesn't make a difference. These are what we call the big five. Now, here's what's crazy about the big five. They literally, and I'm not exaggerating, they run the economy in terms of the way buyers learn stuff. They run the economy. Yet notwithstanding, to this day, 2020, the majority of businesses don't like to lean into these five things. So let's do another live poll, and you've been awesome so far. So everybody please participate because this is really, really helpful. I want you to think about all the content that's on your website right now. All the content could be in a blog, could be on the different pages, et cetera, et cetera. All right, think about those, all that content that you have. All right, thought about it? Good. Now, what percentage of the content on your website directly relates to those five things we just talked about? Cost, problems, comparisons, reviews, and best. What percentage of the content on your website directly relates to those five subject areas? Put a percentage in. Come on, Gay. Put a percentage in. All right, good, 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 good. All right. Now, I would tell you that whenever I do this, and if it's a one-on-one, and a person gives a number, on average, once we actually look at their content, it's less than half of whatever they said here. All right. So if you said that you're around 30%, you're probably around 10 to 15. This is just normal, okay, with most people. I'm not saying that you're that way. This is just normal in terms of when we do a real analysis, right? And so this is one of the great issues that we have within our organizations. At least 75% of your content, if you have a blog, a learning center, videos, whatever, should be about these five things. You say, that's crazy, Marcus, that's crazy. Oh, I'm telling you, it's not crazy at all. Now, question is why? All right, let's analyze why for a second. Number one, major reason why is because these are the fundamental questions your sales team is getting asked every single day. These are all bottom of the funnel based questions. Pricing question, bottom of the funnel based question. These people are serious buyers, okay? Your sales team's answering it every day. So these are the questions that your sales team deals with, and therefore, this is the type of content that your sales team would actually integrate into the sales process. One of the tragedies that we consistently see between sales and marketing departments, marketing is producing content, okay? Sales team has no idea what they're producing. They not only don't participate in producing it, but they never use it with a customer, okay? Pretty sad, but it's incredibly true. We see it a lot. We see it a lot. Ask yourself right now, how often does my sales team integrate content into the sales process? Don't answer it yet. I just want you to think about that. But these five subjects, if you want to dominate the web, if you want to become the voice of trust, you talk about these five things. Now, we don't have a ton of time to discuss how that works, but I'm just going to, if somebody wants to know, if you're in an industry and you want to know how the big five would apply to you, in the chat, type in the industry and I'll give you an example of how this would apply to you. All right, if you're trying to think of how it would work. All right. Okay. Well, you got some good ones. Okay. So let's say we were doing IT professional services. Todd, we'll go with you for a second. Okay. So here's the five things. Cost is number one. Okay. I might say something like this. What is the average cost to outsource your IT for a small business? Okay. All right. Notice I said for small business. Right. This is pretty important. Or if it's the type of industry, you might say that too. So that's number one. That's the cost question. Now, by the way, when you talk about cost and price, the key is that you explain all the factors that would drive cost up and down in an industry, because this is how you explain value proposition. We're not saying just give a price, but you've got to explain the thing. So when you produce a piece of content around cost and price, 80% of it should be around four things. What drives costs up in the industry? What keeps costs down in the industry? Why are some companies so expensive? Why are some companies so cheap? Okay, those 4 things. Those 4 things. You spend 80% of your time on that, not about you, not about your product. The other 20% of your time is about where you fall in that. This is how you can paint the picture of value. Okay, and so second one about problems with IT. Okay. So literally, you could write an article that is, what are the pros and cons of outsourcing your IT to another company, for example? Or what are the pros and cons of outsourcing your IT as a small business? Now, this is something that you've been asked before, Todd. People are wanting to know all the time. I'm trying to weigh, should I do this in-house or should I outsource it? So there's pros and cons. And so that's an example of a quote negative, because there's real pros and cons, and you should be answering that. Comparison, okay? Outsourcing versus insourcing your IT services, which is best for you? And the sad thing about your industry, Todd, people all the time will say things like, why you should outsource your IT services. Do not show your dang bias in the title of your stuff, folks. I see it all the time when it comes to content. Because then we already know that you're completely biased in what you're about to tell me. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right. Reviews. Reviews, we're going to combine the last 2. Todd, where are you located?
Ottawa, Canada.
Okay, good. This is perfect. So literally one would be, Todd, potentially, it could be a review of the 5 best IT service companies in Ottawa, Canada. And not only do you review your customers, but you talk about yourself there, which sounds crazy. You can read all about it and They Ask You Answer. It's one of the most effective things we do with clients, right? You can either wait for your industry to produce reviews, or you can be the one that everybody goes to for reviews. I can tell you with my swimming pool company, whenever anybody is researching one of my competitors, usually they'll stumble across different pieces of content I've written about my competitors. I never speak negative though. Okay, never speak negative, but I openly talk about my competition in a helpful way for people. Again, we never speak negative and we never speak opinion on competitors, but we always talk about them because it's a question people ask. That's the essence of They Ask You Answer. So I combine those last 2 for you there, Todd. Now, the thing about it is, if you did those 5 things, those 5 that I just did for you, the reality is the majority of your competitors haven't done at least 3 of those. They haven't done cost, they haven't done reviews, they haven't done best, okay? They probably haven't done pros and cons, at least not honestly, of outsourcing your IT. Some of them may have done the outsourcing versus insourcing your IT, which is best for you, but probably not. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
That's what real buyers want to know. And that's what you could be talking about, okay? And so what I just did, now, by the way, Todd, for you or anybody else, there's multiple cost questions that you get. There's multiple problems questions you get. In other words, negatives. Let me give you an example of problems for a swimming pool company, okay? I sell fiberglass pools. So problems would be, are fiberglass pools ugly? Do fiberglass pools look cheap? Do fiberglass pools crack? Do fiberglass pools pop out of the ground? Every single one of those we've addressed on our website. We've talked a lot about it. Do not hide from the negative questions people are asking about that thing that you sell. You lean into it because you have a choice as a business. You can own the conversation or somebody could own that for you. That is the choice that we have. That is the great choice in many ways of content in 2020 and beyond. Do you want to own the conversation? Because if we want to own the conversation, you can. You can be a part of it always. Can't always give specific answers, but you can't always address the question. And so before you say there's no way we could talk about that, ask yourself, well, could we address it? Oh yeah. How could we address it and still teach them, still give them some value? There's different ways to do that every single time. Those should be the 5 subjects you're talking about the most when it comes to content that moves the sales needle, content that's the best for search, content that is going to help your sales team right now to address major questions, content that they'll want to integrate into the sales process. Now, by the way, if anybody has a question, all right, make sure you give an example. Make sure you ask. Yes.
It's in there. Can you give me some examples of something you might say about your competitors? And you just yourself too. So
yeah. So there's different things that you can say about your competitors. So let me give an example. Let me give an example of this because I want to show everybody here. So hopefully I can share my screen. It looks like I can. Good. So let's say that I went to Google right now and typed in best pool builders, Richmond, Virginia, where I live, right? So once you get past the ads, then you'll see the first one is who are the best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia. All right. So this is an example of combining two of the big five. You notice we've got best and we've got reviews together. Now this is prolifically searched by people that live in Richmond, Virginia looking for a pool all the time. Now, most companies would never consider producing a piece of content like this because A, it means they have to mention their competitors. B, it mentions that, or they have to do something that things like third-party sites would do something like this. Well, I don't believe in leaving my success as a business owner in the hands of a third-party site and their opinions that are generally wrong and they know nothing about my industry. So I would much rather handle these things myself. I want to own conversations. All the conversations in my industry, I want to own. And so once the person searches that, the first one they're going to see, the first one they're probably going to click is us. Okay, good. So they click on us. Once they click on us, what do they see? Okay, so there's a couple of things here I want to show you. This is really, really important. So let's say that you just did this and you're starting to read this. Now I'm going to read the first couple paragraphs. It's really important that you understand the tonality by which we're presenting this information. So if you read the first couple paragraphs, here's what it says. Each year, we at River Pools and Spas meet with well over 100 households in the Central Virginia, Richmond area with respect to their in-ground swimming pool installation. Because so many folks know our thoughts and feelings from this website on all things pool construction, they often ask us who are some of the other builders and competitors we have in the area. We're never one to shy away from being blatantly honest with respect to the competition, and we want our customers to be as informed as possible. Here's a list of some of the companies that have a solid in-ground pool building history in the Richmond area. Now, before we go on, what's your impression of this company right now? Your impression is, wow, they're pretty honest. That's impressive. And I can probably trust them. That's what you're thinking right now. You also think they're pretty gutsy, right? Now we go ahead and we mention 5 other companies. You know, what's interesting about, 4 other companies. What's interesting about this, I don't even put myself on the list. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do this. I don't put myself on the list. Why? Because if I create a best of list and I put myself on said list, then it becomes self-serving, right? My obsession is trust and answering people's questions honestly and transparently as a salesperson would in the moment if they asked. And so what do we say about Playmore Pools? Having been around for years, Playmore Pools is located in the Mechanicsville area and specializes in vinyl liner in-ground pools. The company also installs fiberglass pools and has a heavy emphasis on automatic pool cover installations. Now, you say, that's interesting. All facts, correct. Where did we get that information? From their website, okay? Didn't make up anything, comes right from their website. Now, you might say to yourself, well, how have your competitors reacted to this? Well, before I say that, let me give you another example of how this would work. All right, so let's say that I went online right now and I typed in reviews, play more pools, Richmond, Virginia. Okay. So this is a common search. Playmore is my biggest competitor in Richmond, Virginia. People are searching this all the time. Okay. So when somebody searches this, oh gee, look, we're the first one that shows up again. Isn't this glorious? So I had a lady a couple years ago. She came to us and she said, Marcus, the craziest thing happened to me. I was this close to signing a contract with Playmore Pools. But before I signed that contract, I decided to go into the internet and research their company. And as I was researching their company, I stumbled across this article that you guys had written. I said, my goodness, these guys are so honest. I should probably call them too. And of course, you know what happened. Otherwise, I wouldn't be telling you the story. So this one single article has generated for our company about $1 million in sales since the day it was written, because we track all revenue back to content, right? We always were very obsessive about that. Okay, we use HubSpot and we track it back. Now, you might say, aren't you afraid you've introduced them to the competitors? I just don't think buyers are dumb. And if they want to know who my competitors are, it's going to take them less than a second online. This is why I know you know, that consumer ignorance, buyer ignorance, is no longer a viable sales and marketing strategy. So if we treat buyers as informed, intelligent human beings, and we give them the information that they're asking us all the time, searching, fearing, questioning, it's amazing what we can do to become the thought leader within our space. This is why so many companies that have embraced these philosophies of the big 5 and they ask you answer, they dominate their space. You can read all the case studies in the book, but I mean, it is clear domination, all right? And so that is an example of how you can talk about your competitors you definitely don't get in trouble. Last thing I want to say about this one before I answer any of your questions on this, you might say, well, how did your competitors respond? I will see my competitors sometimes, and literally what they say to me is, you know, Marcus, I saw you produce that list. You put us on that list. I don't know why you put us on this list, but thank you. That's their response every time. And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, no, thank you. But they don't realize the benefit that I'm getting by openly talking about them. I'm drafting off of their success, and I'm funneling leads into my company by openly talking about them. Okay. So Mike says, I love this way to jack your competitors when it comes to search. That's exactly right, Mike. But it's also just being helpful and answering their questions. Okay. Kamal said, but these statements are very benign in nature. They can't be negative, can they? I don't mix any negative into it. Okay. And I do keep it pretty benign. I don't want to shower them with praise. I just want to stick to the basic facts. In this case, I'll say what they specialize in. Okay, so that's how it works.
What I meant, they can't come to you though, can they? I mean, your statements are perfect.
You're correct.
In their vanilla. They're
You're
so
right,
vanilla,
Kamal.
it's lovely.
That's right,
So
and it's off of their website too. It's off their it's their words, right? So they're not going to yell at themselves, and this is why it's always a shock for them. And I've done this in so many industries at this point. And usually, there's a little bit of a conversation I have to have with leadership teams. I'm like, let me show you how this is going to work. And they're like, ah. And then all of a sudden we start to track revenue and leads. And they're like, holy cow, this is unbelievable what you're doing here, Marcus. Look, think about how many industries are just completely contingent or success is dictated by Angie's freaking list or some other company, right? Why in the world would we leave the success of our business in the hands of a third-party site is beyond me. It just doesn't make any sense. I just don't believe that that's what we signed up for as businesses, as business owners. As an entrepreneur, we did this deal because we want to dictate our futures and our destinies. That's like the problem with all of us. That's the little sickness that we all have, right? It's a beautiful sickness. And at the same time, we need to carry that over into this digital realm. And this is one way that you can do it. And so make sure you consider these things, because again, this is data that's inarguable at this point in terms of whether it works or not. And so if you're not going to answer these questions, somebody else in your space will. Another very specific question from V. McMahon. Are you linking out to these other companies in your blog posts? I am not. The reason why I'm not is because I don't want to give them any juice. I figure if somebody wants to research them, they can just go ahead and type their name in. But that's one thing I'm not going to do. You might say, well, it would be helpful if you did. You're right. It'd probably be helpful to them, but I'm not going to do it. Okay, I'm not going to do it. So I don't want to give them anything. Oksana said, what if you're not clear about who your direct competition is? Any suggestions? Well, I mean, generally speaking, if you've been in the game for much period of time, you've lost deals. And you've also heard a lot about other companies in the marketplace. And so this is, this is one of those things where usually I choose in industries when someone says, who should we choose? I say, who do you think is best in your space? And who do you lose the most deals to? That's who we should put on the list. Who do you think is best? And who do you lose the most deals to? Because based on that, now you're going to be able to ride their coattails a lot more, and you're going to be able to inject yourself into conversations that you otherwise wouldn't have been a part of.
Hey, Marcus,
Yeah.
her question's probably based more around, do I run or do I swim versus, pool and pool and pool and pool. So if she doesn't understand, she does mindfulness coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So her competition is probably, there are other mindfulness coaches, but her competition is more what is not that?
Okay, yeah. So what you can do is, instead of, if you don't know who they are, what you can say is you can do content like how to find the best mindfulness coach for small business owners. Once again, I'll just use a specific, because it's always better to be specific versus generic. It's much better to say how to find the best mindfulness coach for a small business owner than it is to say how to find the best mindfulness coach. It's just better because you're leaning into a very specific market, by the way. Okay. And when you do that, now you can just describe what are the factors that dictate a really good coach versus a coach that isn't as good? And so even though you haven't now talked about the competition, you've still talked about, or somebody is trying to research the best, you teach them how to find the best. And so that's one alternative that you have, and it works quite well. It worked quite well. All right. What do I think? How do I think about online reviews? Do you care about how Google reviews for river pools versus competitors? Yeah, I mean, I think online reviews are very important. And it's just one of those things where, we tried to be active in getting our customers to do that. Like everybody else, we're imperfect, right? So sometimes we have our ups and our downs, and we try to, if we get a bad review, which this year I've gotten more bad reviews than I've ever gotten before with my swimming pool company. And the reason for that, and this is common across the board, I don't know a single swimming pool company that hasn't. This is the busiest year in the history of swimming pools, like literally the history of swimming pools. And so, and people are, because of COVID, they're more impatient than they've ever been. There's a high agitation state in the market today, as many of you have found. And so customers' patience level is shorter and the demand is much higher. We're in the weeds much more. So yeah, we've gotten a lot of negative reviews this year, which really, really sucks. And so that's one thing that we're working on. And so we've spent time talking to the customers on the phone. We have asked people to take off reviews this year after we've gotten fixed. So that's something that we're very proactive with those that we do a good job for, and proactive with the ones that we've stunk up the joint with. And I'm very, as you can probably tell, I don't have anything to hide. I'm going to tell you exactly how it is for our company, because that's real. And, we try to be real in these parts, right? So yeah, we're an imperfect company, but that's how we approach that. Are these pages pure organic search plays in your experience, or are they valuable pages within an existing customer journey who are already on your site? How much of that $1 million page you shared as an example were in cases where that page wasn't the landing page from search? Eric, great question. So there are certain questions that people ask that are more to bring them in. They're not about the experience of the actual website. Then there's questions that are very much about the experience. And then there's questions that are about both. So for example, pricing, how much does a fiberglass pool cost? Anything like that. That is very much improve the experience of the website, right? In other words, if you're there, if you didn't come through that, you still want to see that. I know it's a major question that you have, but it also is killer from a search perspective or an SEO perspective. What's interesting is the most common questions your sales teams are getting asked are oftentimes the best for search. Somehow, a lot of SEOs don't teach that. It's befuddling to me. It doesn't make any sense. And so there are absolutely pieces of content that serve both. All right, the majority do. Then there are some that are just meant to bring them in. The one about who are the best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia, I'm not plastering that on the homepage of the website. I'm not trying to funnel people to that. I'm trying to use that to funnel them to the site. So that would act more of a quote landing page in that context. But I'm not advertising that page as one I want everybody to see, if that makes sense. That's a pretty good question. But the revenue is inarguable. The first cost article I ever did for River Pools has made the company over $15 million in sales. That was for a local company. Now that we're a national company, it's probably closer to, it's probably closer to 50 million, and well into the hundreds of millions for all of our dealers, because now we've got franchisees and dealers too. So it just shows you when you do revenue attribution for content, it's quite amazing. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? And for those Petra team, if I'm missing a question here, make sure you let me know, because I don't want to miss them.
David's got one in here.
Yeah. So David what is the process after they submit their purchase online, and do you continue to attempt to keep it no salesman? So yeah, David, I think that's a good one in terms of the seller-free sales experience. So I'm very much in favor of having a human touch. There's different ways that you can manifest that. One example that we should all be doing at this point is one-to-one video. Andy's team is very good at one-to-one video. They actually sent me, ended up being a one-to-many video, because their entire team sent me a video after the webinar that I recently did. Was really impressed with that, right? So they really get it. They're eating the dog food, and it's like, this is how it should be. And so an example of, even if you don't necessarily want to have a person talk to them after the sale is made, a personalized video that's going to them from somebody on your staff that's confirming everything they just experienced and what's going to happen next, I would say that's still very personalized, very human, but it's still seller free in many ways. I'd experiment with both, but at that point, once they've made the purchase, they're usually blown away if you talk to them. But oftentimes before the purchase, they don't want you to talk to them. It's quite fascinating. Now, keep in mind, you want to offer both. You've got the people that just want to talk to a salesperson or want to do chat or whatever it is right now. You have other people that want to choose their own adventure by going the seller-free sales experience route. If you can provide both, you're thinking ahead of the game. I know this, all of us as organizations should be thinking, how can I provide more seller-free sales experiences? Remember, that doesn't mean they've made the entire transaction. It doesn't mean they bought the thing on your website. It could mean that it's as simple as they've made a major decision from the website that they otherwise wouldn't have known unless they had talked to a real expert or person and arrived at that conclusion with that expert, like an engineer or customer service provider or a salesperson, whoever that person might be. Okay, good stuff. What do you use for revenue attribution of content? You know, this is one of those things, gang, that is so important, because how can we as business leaders at the end of the year make decisions, especially with digital marketing, like, hey, let's hire a content manager for our organization, produce more content. Let's do video. Let's do more video. Let's do more social. It's like we hear all the things we're supposed to do, but how often do we justify them with actual revenue? You know, I don't know about you all, but I got to the point as a business owner. You know, I started my swimming pool company in 2000. I started and still have it to this day. It turned into 3 different companies. I've got my marketing agency, Impact, with Bob Ruffalo and team. And we've had that now for almost about 10 years. I don't like doing stuff that I can't do revenue attribution with. I don't like, you know, just trying to think of a kosher term here. I don't like just throwing it into the wind and just hoping that it sticks. I want to know, did it make any money? And today we can do that if we're using the right tools, especially from a digital perspective, better than any time in the history of the world. And so the tool that I use is HubSpot. It's not the only one. I think it's far and away the best one, though, for measuring the ROI of your digital sales and marketing. And HUBSPOT, we're obviously a partner of HubSpot at Impact. It's not the only one. There's other big competitors. I just happen to think they're the best for small to medium-sized businesses. Okay. Anybody else? Am I missing one that I can't currently see? Hopefully this is helpful to everybody, by the way. If this is helpful to you, by the way, type in helpful so I get that reinforcement that everybody needs, despite appearing like they have so much confidence. All right, you guys are awesome.
Yeah, you're
all right,
getting
there is one other thing that I appreciate the all caps. You guys are awesome. That I've been thinking a lot about, and I just want to switch gears for a second. Hopefully you don't mind if I switch gears, everybody. Since COVID started, and this aligns itself with the webinar that I did with Andy's team just a couple weeks ago, huge portion of my time has been teaching sales teams how to make this shift. Let's analyze the world of sales for a second. 71% of all salespeople in March of 2020 were outside sales reps. That's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of professionals around the world that were outside sales reps, traveling sales people, right? Roughly millions of salespeople. And these people, their lives have been turned upside down. Many of them, we've said, just use video, get on Zoom, figure it out. And it has been a bloodbath for salespeople around the world. It's not an exaggeration, that's a reality. One sad thing is what I have clearly found is that it doesn't take a tremendous amount of training in order for a salesperson to get very familiar with becoming world-class by selling over video. But just because somebody's good at sales doesn't mean that they're good at selling over video. And so if you have not invested in some type of training, more than this is how you use Zoom, which is not enough, with your sales team and really taught them some of the best practices, you're missing a major opportunity. We've got to rethink sales in general. And when I say we've got to rethink sales in general, let me just hit a couple points to you, all right, really quick. All right. Number one, this is the observations I've made, especially in 8 months of, like, right now, to give you an example, I'm training the entire Duracell sales team on how to go from what they've always done, visit the retailer, to selling online. Right? Great, wonderful company. And it has been, like every other company, a struggle for many. Others are getting it quickly, but many are not. And so the question is, what do they need to do? What I have noticed and observed is the following in these last few months. Okay, the very high majority of companies have lost the beautiful practice of role playing. Role playing somehow died for most organizations, and they spend all their time looking at CRMs and talking about what's in the pipeline and not really training on how to be better at sales communication. This is a prolific issue with organizations around the world. That's one thing I've noticed. Another thing I've noticed, most sales teams, that's awesome, Frank. I love that you role play every day. That keeps that sword so stinking sharp. It's so beautiful. And I can tell within like literally minutes when a sales organization has the culture of role playing, because their willingness just to go and say it and do it out loud and to practice it is so much greater than the organizations that are not. The ones that are not, they become guarded as organizations in terms of showing their skills, showing their communication. Another issue, and I've already said this, if our sales teams are not doing one-to-one video as part of their everyday practice, we're missing major opportunities. Over 90% of salespeople have no idea what one-to-one video is. The tool that I recommend for that, and there's different ones out there, the tool that I recommend for that is called Vidyard. Okay, it's called Vidyard, Vidyard. Okay, I tried typing it in, and then all of a sudden it changed it in spell check. Vidyard. Okay, so somebody type that in, Vidyard. Make sure your team's doing one-to-one video. Make sure, BombBomb is another good one, Marshall. You're exactly right. BombBomb is very good. Another one that I'm seeing that is a big issue. I still have yet to meet one sales team in the world, and I've now trained hundreds and hundreds. I've yet to see one that has been trained on how to write better subject lines in their one-to-one emails. It's amazing to me. They send out hundreds of emails a month to prospects and customers, yet we don't spend the time training. Marketers obsess over subject lines. Salespeople don't think twice about them. And what do they say all day long? Following up, touching base, reaching out, checking in. That's the death of all open rates, my friends. Make sure your team is not doing. If we're sending following up, checking in, reaching out, touching base emails, we're essentially saying, please do not open my email. Average open rate for emails, one-to-one, 18%. They've done the studies, 18%. That's what the average on this call is here for all of our salespeople, 18%. We should be so bothered by that, but it goes back to a lack of training. Let's train those things. What are the best practices? Another one that I want to talk about really quick. We've got about 10 minutes left. Another one that I want to share with everybody is most sales teams have never been trained how to integrate marketing content into the sales process. And let me share a quick story with you. And this really changed my life. At the beginning of 2013, I was looking at two groups of people on my company's website. Both have filled out a form and said, I want to get a quote from you. So this group filled out a form, said, I want to get a quote, but they ended up not buying. This group filled out a form and they ended up buying. So I said, what is the difference between the ones that did not versus did buy? And what I noticed was the number 30 kept jumping out underneath the group that had bought. In other words, what we found was, and everybody pay attention, this is so fascinating. If somebody read 30 or more pieces of our content, pages of our website, they would buy 80% of the time. If they didn't read 30 or more pages, the closing rates were 25%. So they would go from 25 to 80% simply by reading 30 or more pages of the website. And so that's when I said, oh my gosh, all I have to do is get people to read 30 pieces of content and they're going to buy 4 out of 5 appointments. This will change my sales team forever. if I can train them how to do this. And so I started teaching what we call today assignment selling. Assignment selling is the process of giving your prospects and customers assignments. And by giving them the right assignment, they become more invested in you and they move down the funnel or out of the funnel, both of which is good, faster. So what does assignment selling look like? All right. So Andy, I'm going to ask you to be the customer really quick. Okay. And this is the
Am I
type of
buying?
thing. What's that?
What am I potentially purchasing?
It doesn't matter, but today you're going to buy a pool.
Oh,
All right. All right. So the key to doing assignment selling the right way is you must give the why behind the assignment. If you don't explain the why, then it's just annoying. But if you explain the why and you say it in such a way that they're like, oh yeah, I better do that. Yeah, I better find that out. I better learn that. Well, then it's powerful. The second part is you want to get a confirmation as to the why. All right. And so it might look something like this. So let's say hypothetically that we're on the phone right now and I'm setting up an appointment with Andy for this Friday, right? So it will go something like this. So Andy, as we're talking on the phone right now, I'm going to send you two things because with the swimming pool, you're about to spend a lot of money and I know you don't want to make any mistakes. And so as to make sure you don't make any mistakes, here's the two things that I'm going to send you. Now, the first thing I'm going to send you is a guide. This guide is great because it's going to answer all the questions that you have about pools that nobody has addressed yet. So for example, should I get a heater with my pool? What's the best type of heater? Should it be gas? Should it be electric? Should it even cool the water? Should I get a cover with my pool? What's the best type of cover? Should it be vinyl? Should it be mesh? Should it be automatic? Now this guide, Andy, it's about 30 pages long, but I promise it'll be well worth your time. Now, the second thing I'm going to send you is a video. This video is great because it's going to show you the pool being installed essentially in your backyard. In other words, showing up to your house, excavation, going in the ground, patio going around it, the whole nine. This way, when I come out to your house on Friday, you're not going to ask me, so Marcus, what does this process look like? You're already going to know. So Andy, will you take the time to review those things before our appointment on Friday? 90% of the time, Andy says, sure. So he says, sure.
sure.
90% of the time. Okay. Now, 10% of the time or less, somebody will say, no. Now, by the way, no is not a bad thing because in that moment, they just saved everybody a whole lot of time. Because if they're not willing to become educated about that product or service that you sell, that means they're basing the decision on one single variable, and we all know what that variable is. It means they're basing it purely on price. And if that's the game we're in, we're probably going to lose it every single time. That's called assignment selling. Now, that's something that you want to teach and train your sales team to do. They won't naturally just understand, how do I use content in the sales process? How do I get somebody to commit to read that guide, watch that video before our sales appointment? But if you train them on these things, it's amazing what will happen to closing rates. Our average customer at River Pools today reads over 100 pages of the website before they buy. Do not buy in to this idea that people are too busy and don't have the time. That is one of the worst loads of BS I've ever heard in my life. Your customers, like mine, will sit there and watch 10 straight hours of Game of Thrones. For the love of all that's pure and holy, they'll certainly spend more than 5 minutes on your website, assuming they feel like it's valuable and that they're getting what they want. Hence, they ask, you answer. It's a beautiful, beautiful compass. Make sure you're teaching that as well. Last, salespeople, and then we'll finish with any of your questions. I'm just talking about trends that I'm seeing. One of the biggest problematic trends that I'm seeing, and Andy knows this very well, because it really in many ways defines the difference between an average coach and a great coach. And that is this. These days, more and more salespeople believe, subconsciously or consciously, that it's more important to be liked than it is to be respected. This is a big, big issue with sales organizations globally. the moment a salesperson understands why and how to garner respect and why it matters more than being liked, and how the like will come as a byproduct of being respected. You see, we fire people we like, but we never fire people we respect. And that's what we have to remember as we're training our sales teams. Is this something you're talking about with your team? Hopefully it is. So I got a quick assignment for everybody, just really quick, really quick. You've all have been great so far. And Andy, thanks for just giving me the floor to riff. I don't get these chances very much. And so just the good old riffs, they're usually set. This was a riff. And so based on everything you heard from myself, and you heard a bunch, I know it was a really quick, just like, whew, here's a bunch of stuff. Of all those things that you heard me say, what's the one thing that you heard that you're saying, my goodness, we're not doing that. We should do that. Benjamin, the answer is yes. What's the one thing that you heard me say where you're like, that's something we need to start doing. We're not doing that as an organization. Everybody type one in. Come on now, type one in. Greg said assignment selling. That's exactly one that I would have figured. The big five. So rare across the board. Frank said selling pools. Yeah, it's a good industry to be in right now, Frank. I ain't gonna lie to you. Okay. Assignment selling. Own the conversation. HubSpot. It's good. We got a good mix of stuff that we're seeing right now. Really, really good mix. All right. Authentic, open conversation. I like that one a lot. All right. Does anybody have any questions before? Okay, we got a question there from Emily. Do you think there's a difference between selling products or service or training? No, I don't think there's almost any difference at all, because when you boil them down to their core, it is fundamentally based on trust and psychology. And so I have not found a difference. That's why the big five is as prolific in B2B service-based businesses as it is in the B2C market as well. It doesn't change. I mean, I've looked for ways that it was so different. Now, granted, sometimes with B2B, you have, maybe more decision makers, but for every time somebody says, yeah, but here's how we sell, I will show a parallel industry in the B2C space. It's the same thing. Right? People say, yeah, Marcus, we have a very long sales cycle. Yeah, average sales for a swimming pool is more than a year sales cycle, right? So that seems pretty long to me. That's B2C. It's no big deal. So we can always find exceptions. Okay. How does this change based on price point? It doesn't really, Chip, at all, because especially if you're talking about cost and price, if that's what you're saying, the key is that you're defining and explaining value in the marketplace. And so because you're explaining it so well, then it's able to cover the different price points within the industry. I'm not sure if that answers your question. Can you send an example of the brochure you send potential pool clients? All you have to do is go to River Pools and Spas, and you can just download any of our buying guides. We've got different buying guides on there. We've got an amazing learning center. By the way, you should have a learning center, not just a blog, but a learning center on your site. All right. So if you go to the homepage of riverpoolsandspas.com, you'll see that. If you can't find it, just type in any question about a fiberglass pool you can think of in Google. I have a sense it'll bring you to the promised land. Would you suggest these same strategies for recruiters? Oh my gosh. In fact, we've had companies, speaking of recruiting, we have companies do Big Five for HR. And it's crazy effective for just recruiting in HR, because what are the major questions within HR and recruiting? Cost, salary, okay? Problems like what best, worst places to work, stuff like that. Comparisons, comparing industries to work in, comparing cities and states and locales to work in. Like, it just goes on and on. It's like the Big Five is so crazy applicable to that industry. It's nuts. Let's see if there's any more. Big Five for pharmaceutical. Yeah, and in fact, I've had pharmaceutical companies, and we've done a ton of Big Five because it's actually quite prolific there. It would surprise you. We're out of time. That sucks. You guys were amazing. Andy, final words from you, my friend?
Hey man, you always bring good content to the group, and you can see from all the comments that everybody's soaking the stuff up. it's a place that people are a little bit confused with, and I think it's not that confusing. Once you speak about it, it becomes pretty clear what needs to happen. So I think you did a fantastic job. Thank you for being here. These guys are one of a Petra member as well. So they're a company just like many of you that work with us on a regular basis, and we have access to them. So if you have any questions about anything, I know some of you asked about, connecting back with Marcus. We can do that through us or directly at Marcus. He's happy to pick the phone up and have a phone conversation. Friends of Petra are always friends of everybody that's in Petra. So appreciate you being here, Marcus. We'll do some follow-up and make sure that any other questions that get missed get to you. Give him some love. Nice job.